Hello, welcome to Quackalope, and today we are covering OverBattle, the All-War by Syther Gaming. Now, this is a massive dudes on the map, kind of Axis and Allies inspired space game.
Yeah, it's like a space opera combat epic type of thing.
I like the classification of a space opera. I think that feels accurate. There's a lot of things going on in this game, and in a lot of ways this is sort of a newer style of game for us. I don't have as much experience with a dudes on the map sort of exploration, territory control style game that's inspired or built off of some of the old classics, you know, heavily inspired by your Axis and Allies style exploration, combat, set around, like you said, a space opera. I do have some experience with 4X style games, but this isn't quite a 4X game.
No, not at all. I would call it maybe a 2X.
Yeah, I mean, there's elements here that resemble that 4X type of structure. You are expanding, you are kind of exploiting the resources you have on hand, but your main win condition is going to be conquering and controlling different territories.
Yeah, it's mostly about getting a bunch of units, trying to make the best you can with the situation and kind of like the groupings that you prepare, and just crazy movement across the board, kind of building up to a crescendo.
I mean, if you like miniature-based games, if you like mechs and spaceships moving across a giant map, this is one you might want to dig into a little bit.
Oh, you know in the movies when the guys have that stick that they used to move all the miniatures? This is perfect for this. Just moving everything.
You're across a game state, you're transferring something like 1,000 miniatures across the terrain and map.
1,000.
Which is insane. I mean, I might not be wrong in that actual estimate.
Close enough, yeah.
We're close enough to that pinpoint. All that being said, I want to talk to you about the structure of this video, right? Because there's a lot going on in this game, and there's a lot of other videos out there that will point you to kind of how to play or the flow. So we're going to be doing two things specifically with this video. First off, we're going to be showing everything in beautiful, high-quality footage like we normally do.
Stamp, of course.
That's not one of the things, though. However, we are going to be breaking this video down into 3 parts because the game system really flows around 3 core subjects. You have the sort of strategic terrain building part of the game, and we'll demonstrate that and display that and talk about that part. Then you have the actual combat, the movement, the equipping, the gaining troops as units discover these planets and start exploiting them for resources. And then you have the space opera shift, where your Sin, your red character here, is going to transfer their allegiance in a way. Instead of being a partial ally to everyone in the game state, they decide they'd like to conquer the region for themselves.
So if you're familiar with hidden role games, this is one where you do become a traitor, but you're not hidden at all. Everybody knows.
It's very clear what you're doing, but your win condition is going to be slightly different from the other players, which adds an interesting dynamic to the end of the game. So we're going to break this video down into those 3 succinct parts and talk about how they operate, and not give you a specific how to play, but more talk about the things that we're interested in. The stuff that might make this a game that you'd be excited to kind of get to your table. We want to give you as much information as we can to let you know if this game's going to be right for you and your gaming group. But if you want a official how to play or more of a deep dive into core systems, there's some other videos out there that are going to be worth checking out. Specifically, the guys over at Board Game Closet gave a beautiful preview of this game. Honestly, I'm a little upset because they're kind of stepping on my toes with the visuals that they're working with. So go check them out. Genuinely, they're a good kind of accompanying video to what we're trying to do here. Along with that, I do want to thank Syther Gaming for sponsoring this video. They help us kind of bring interesting content to the channel and do everything else we do here on the channel. So we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Jan, let's go ahead and swing into this game. Now, the first stage of this game, and we have things immaculately displayed here.
Yeah,
but really,
this is not how you would play it.
No, and we'll have some B-roll of the storage trays and stuff that you have. We just wanted to get all these miniatures out on the table so you could see sort of the layout or the diversity when it comes to the units that you're going to be using. The first stage of this game is going to consist of actually developing the map that you're playing on. So talk a little bit about how that's going to work.
Yeah, so you start off with the drafting. Everybody's going to get a different amount of planets and a different amount of smaller secondary planets and asteroids. And through player order, you're going to be able to create the galaxy or this section of this intergalactic map based on your criteria and whatever you want to do, term strategically or just to kind of like impede on other players' turfs.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this part of the game is from ground zero. Now, it takes a few plays to understand the strategery in this area.
Yeah.
But from ground zero, you can sit here and you can be pulling your home planet. You can have some of your asteroid belts, and then you can have one of your little partial planets over here, and you're going to start laying them out. So like you said, depending on turn order, kind of the position that everyone is, I think the Sin typically goes at the end.
Yeah.
You're going to start placing these planets out here on this grid. Thinking about things like how you want to chain asteroid belts, because you can actually use their gravitational field to warp around and create kind of a superhighway in a sense.
And one of the things that I find fascinating about this particular step is that a lot of games have variable setup, depending on if you want a longer game, if you want a shorter game. But in this is when you make that decision. If you want a longer game, place your planets on the other side of the galaxy.
Separate from everyone else. But if you want a game that's a little bit more condensed, or you're playing with a smaller player count, you can either split this map in half with some of these grid lines, or you can get right up in someone's face.
Yeah.
Placing your home planet in a position for them to be hungry for. Getting an asteroid line kind of set up around the side here so that we can sweep around the curve. This is where you make that determination, right? Two of the things that I find really fascinating is the challenge between your main planet and your moon.
Yeah.
Because both of these are going to be your controlled territory. So the end win condition of the game is for you to have infiltrated
another person's
space, right? Control either their moon or their planet.
Yep.
This becomes really strategic because sometimes this can be a bait and switch. Sometimes you want this in the very back because you just don't have to worry about it, right?
Yep.
And sweeping around the edge of someone's space to either find a weak point or, go ahead and storm kind of one of their subsectors becomes a really big balance point in this game.
It's all about a build-up. It's almost, I kind of picture the idea of a pan just slowly bubbling and boiling until it just can't take anymore, and that's when you attack. So all these units that you have, this is just partial of, like Jesse said, there's so many minis. Your goal is to get as much of those out there and then invade with everything you
want
have.
to develop and build up to a crescendo like you were talking about. The other interesting thing, which I mentioned briefly though, is going to be the positioning of your asteroid belts.
Yeah.
These asteroid belts will not only develop a lot of resources for you, because you can just lock in and harvest them, but you can actually move around any of these gravitational rings. So for instance, on the planet here, if you're in this gravitational ring, if you're in the atmosphere, any of these hexes next to it are adjacent, right? So this is actually existing in that full rotation, which means it can pop in and go out, which is important when it comes to your movement abilities across the game state. These asteroid belts work as a little bit of a looping system. So if they're connected, you can actually chain and move along them like a superhighway. This is interesting for a game that is so sprawling, is so massive. It gives you an opportunity to start linking things together, or, like you demonstrated over here, creates a position for you to actually create a barrier or a wall. So if we did this, instead of a superhighway, that becomes a very hard belt of asteroids to pass through.
A super wall.
A super wall. Yeah, so there's a lot of things going in here. Now, like I said, the Sin are going to be the last people to place their planet. That's important because their win condition, let's go ahead and let it out. They're going to exist in a peaceful state for the majority of the game. Moving alongside other units, helping with combat, being pulled into the throes of battle. But then whenever they flip in rounds 4, 5, or 6, they're actually going to want to have control of one specific planet as well.
And the thing is that, remember, they start throughout the game everywhere. So they're likely going to have a really good position by that point.
So you have to balance the game state as a community in a way. Saying, I don't want the Sin to win, so we need to work together to deal with that, while also trying to position yourself to take advantage of another player's home planet. If there's two victory conditions consistent on the board at the same time, then no one wins. You continue with the game. So if the Sin is still leveraged in your home planet, even if you've went out and conquered another person's home planet, you still need to remove them before the game has closed its curtain.
And that might be difficult if the Sin have, unfortunately, cut off all your resources and abilities within your home world.
There's a big balance point. But like I said, the Sin are also going to have their home planet as well, and they're going to start probably far away
on the
from
edges of the world of space. There we go, the nice red planet for the Sin.
There we are. So we'll set them all the way over here. So that is the first stage of this game. The first probably, I'd say when you break it down, maybe 1/8 or 1/6 of the game is going to be composed of setting up the actual map. Now, along with that, you're also going to be given about 350 points and slight asymmetric characters, but primarily you're going to be using from the same pool of resources and technology, but you're going to decide how you want to build those up. Whether you want to invest heavily in battleships, carriers, bombers, jumpers, destroyers, fighters, scouts, transports,
There's
generators,
a lot.
ion cannons,
So
tanks,
many.
mechs, infantry, space stations, or shipyards. There's a lot of different variable player powers here, and a lot of different types of units you can get, all demonstrated in our nice little card system here.
And one of the cool things about these cards is that if you flip them, there's going to be a QR code in the back.
All you
that
have to do is
use to
scan it with your photo
and
app.
you get all the info.
It'll take you to their website where you have all of the info you need for the card. You'll also have info when it comes to purchase abilities and a little bit of backstory and lore. It is not required to use the app.
Oh, not at all.
But it's a way to integrate technology into the gameplay or the flow.
And it also, so because there's so many minis, you're going to need a good guide. So scanning those QR codes does give you another kind of like a 3D model that you're able to look through. And in regards to this drafting system, I think the real nuance to it comes off.
Well, one important thing to say, while this looks like a fully produced production copy of the game, these are 3D printed prototype copies.
Correct.
It's a Kickstarter video. Everyone knows. Continue with your thing.
Well, not everybody knows.
I know. I figured
it's important that you bring it up.
It's 18 minutes into the video, but that's all right. All right, Jam, what were you saying?
So, one of the important things, or the nuance within this initial phase, is something you're going to get a hang of after a few games.
I think that's the key. When you first start, I would honestly try to equal distance to some degree, maybe even play on a smaller map portion, swing into that first game as a learning game. Get the systems down, figure out the strategy, come to understand the role the Sin's going to play, and then you'll be able to begin the game again at ground zero, at the top of the round, being so much more strategic with where you're positioning your planets and how you're intending to spread across this map.
Yeah, and one very important thing is that you're not just competing against planets from other players. There are additional planets that absolutely no one has control over.
There's piles of resources from the very start of the game that you get to conquer, and they become battlegrounds or war zones. So positioning them so that you might have leverage over them, or positioning them in a way that draws someone away from your home planet.
Yeah, exactly.
Can also be a good decision. Now, all of these things are stuff that you will discover after a gameplay or two of this game. Something we want to emphasize. That's why we wanted to make a video that dove into specifics a little bit more than a gradual overview. Because once you've sat down with this game, dug into it, figured out kind of the complexity and the strategy, there's some really cool things going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of crunchiness beneath this hood. And I think this is a great opportunity to actually go into that second phase. So you mentioned a little bit earlier on that you have around 300 points to start distributing,
yeah,
right?
about 350 points, and you're going to be purchasing from a selection of mods. So what we should do, because we don't need to go through the full purchase phase,
of
this
course
is going to
not.
be the top of the round. At that point, once you purchase mechs, you're going to be placing 5 down at a time onto different zones or regions. So let's go ahead and set up the game state as if we're ready to start into the throes of round 2.
Waha, okay.
So we'll go ahead and do that and be back in just a second.
We're back.
Like I said, we went through the process of getting a sort of display of a mid-game or kind of a mid-combat encounter, right? So you could first off see the sweeping nature of this.
Yep.
It is taking over the board. We are moving hundreds? At least 10.
Tens and tens, yes.
We're moving dozens and dozens of troops across the board using chips to indicate different size and capacity numbers, right?
Shields, things like that.
We have shields, we have our 1s, we have our 5s, so can add these underneath transports and battleships to show an entire fleet, kind of control the space a little bit. But let's go ahead and talk about what people are seeing here. What is the state? Once we get to this point, what's the state of the game? This is probably round 2 going on to round 3, right? We've done some prep.
Maybe even farther.
Possibly. I mean, we've done some prep. We've built out some units. We've certainly engaged in some combat in some of these areas. Now, the Sin started over here really close to the yellow guys, right? So they've been able to spread and invest pretty effectively, and at this point in the game, we're not actually able to do anything to them.
Oh, you're just best friends.
We're very
Up to
close.
this point, yeah.
And they have to engage in battles with us, so we can pull them in that direction, but they can also spread in a really unique way. But let's go ahead and set up. What are people seeing here? What's going on?
So, every faction is going to have their homeworld and their moon, as we had spoken about, right? However, as you start growing out, the effect of conquering new areas is going to be twofold.
It's going to be massive.
First, you're going to get resources that you're going to be able to implement immediately into new units, bring more people out into the board, and those are going to be used as kind of bookmarks or jump points that your units are not going to be able to fly across the galaxy to get to that new area.
An important element to keep in mind here, too, is depending on your turn order, you're going to be doing a series of things. You're going to be expanding, attacking, conquering, collecting your resource, and then developing your nation before another player goes, right? So you're actually going to be able to stretch out and secure your positioning and hopefully hold on to it. Now, that could mean you're stretching yourself too thin, opening a door or a window for someone else to sweep in, but if you play it right, if you can conquer an asteroid or two early on in the game, you might be able to secure and hold that ground despite other people's rebuttals.
Or distract your opponent enough to try and sweep in from another side with your jump ship and get them,
When Jan and I played, we sort of ran into each other quite a bit and left Derek completely. You'll be seeing some footage of that. That being said, you mentioned another really key point. If this is close to round 3, we're approaching the point where we gain a unit. We unlock a unit called a jump ship. See if we can find one of these little guys.
This guy right here.
Yeah, so the jump ship is going to be a unique terrain unit in some ways.
Sort of.
For me, it's that visual in Star Wars or Star Trek where you have an entire fleet appearing outside of the line of a planet ready to attack. Now, jump ships are going to give you access to the entirety of this board, but only after round 3, once you've all done stages of development. So when we see a giant fleet over here from Red, or we see like a stack of 5 battleships, that's where a jump ship's going to want to leverage. Pop into that location, and literally in a single move, transport all of those ships anywhere except into a galaxy ring.
Exactly.
Into an atmosphere itself, because then you'd run into the planet and it'd be horrific.
Yeah, you don't want that for your beautiful, beautiful units.
So this is a really important and dynamic stage of the game. The other thing that's going to be happening is starting from this point, you're going to be rolling a die to determine if the Sin player becomes hostile or not.
Yeah.
To decide when they're going to leverage their position and start trying to vie for their own win condition. Now again, their win condition is having security in any one of the other players' home planets. So once they've rolled, I think it's a 4 or 5 or higher.
And it keeps going up and up.
It ramps,
as more as the game goes on. And there becomes a point where there's no option for the Sin. They have to change.
Round 6, they're going to flip, and everyone can see that coming,
Yep.
right? So this is a really dynamic point in the game. You're unlocking the ability to transport across the map. You're really, really watching out for the Sin, trying to make sure you can hold your ground or secure your territory the moment they go hostile. Because here's a key thing. Right now, we're populated with yellow and red existing in the same space. Same thing with blue, right?
Yep.
We're friends. They have to move with you into battle. But the moment they become hostile, all of these battles, all of these pinpoint areas are going to resolve immediately.
Yep.
You need to make sure you can hold your ground and keep your home planet without sacrificing what you have going out in terms of your own personal win condition. That becomes a really salient or important moment in the game.
So the colors in this work very well, because if you start seeing a lot of red in your very blue spaces, it's not going to end well for you.
Or if you start seeing an encroaching wave of yellow approaching your blue planet. Now, if you see the way that I structured myself here, because yellow is sort of split between the two, I've expanded to get resources. I'm working my way towards your home planet, because that will be one of my win conditions. But I'm also trying to keep strength over here and sending a warning force just in case the Sin decides to screw with
the periphery. Just hey, watch it, buddy.
On the horizon line, they can intervene in either of these areas, but if they need, they're going to be able to cut through those Sin's kind of defenses and forces, and that's going to be really important.
Yeah, and I think for blue here, they're focusing more on a defensive standpoint. They're trying to get a lot of units, prepare earlier on.
Get ready for that jump ship to come out.
Yeah, but however, the economy is stifled, because the more you expand as a yellow player, you're going to get more income, more things to do, and that's usually very good.
But you're also losing and you're also using and losing those resources as you're spreading, right? It's that
because you're able to carry over things things as you move along, right?
Yep.
And I think it's key that we talk about how exactly the Sin move.
Yeah, this is a big point, and this is actually an element that is not always obvious until you've really played into the game. That's one thing we're emphasizing, right? So the Sin specifically have to move with you when engaging in a combat.
Only when engaging in combat.
Well, here's an interesting thing. They have some agency on their own as well.
Yeah.
So they develop, they populate, they're going to be able to move and transport units, but only during, unlike other players who have a move phase, the Sin move throughout the entirety of the game whenever a faction attacks and they're allied. So let's say you brought some blue over here. Let's pop in a few. Give me some ground troops here to put on the board.
Ground troops and some air units.
Yeah.
Here's some ground troops right here.
So if they were moving in there, my ground troops would then have to, let me populate a few of these, sweep into this area to try to deal with them, right? Because I don't want them on my home planet. The Sin, who are friendly to me at the moment, can also be forced to move into this location to resolve a giant battle in that space. Yep. Here's the thing. If the Sin are helping me out in this location, that means every other location where they have a friendly unit, they are going to also be able to move their unit based on the movement conditions. So over here on this planet, because all of my people are paying attention to the radio waves, concerned about the battle happening here, they could walk over this way, could move into the middle. They could spread themselves out from this, maybe flying over to an asteroid belt, securing some locations there. This is a really important role and position for the Sin to play in, but it's not immediately obvious until it's pointed out.
It's very sneaky, right?
Yeah.
It's a small incremental thing. It's almost like a butterfly effect, right? Where a very small decision might look completely menial until the end of the game.
We are able to drag them with us. It's the control we have over them. But as they spread in position, you're also thinking about, do I really want to go into this battle? Because it's going to give them the opportunity to populate my planet even more or secure the position, right? It's that rewind, fast forward, that slow kind of speedy movement, right? They're spreading with every action you take, and the question is, how long do you let them do that?
But there's a way that you can control that spread a little bit, and that's through combat.
Yep.
There's a caveat. Whenever you do bring your Sin into combat, you're going to be able to use them in that combat. However, if you take casualties, your casualties go first.
Oh, yeah.
And if there's ever a point where your casualties completely die off...
The Sin aren't going to let themselves die.
Yeah, they immediately join the other faction.
If you get wiped, the Sin's still friends with the other guys, too. They were just there because, they were invited to the party, right? The Sin never get taken out until they become hostile. So they're an infection?
It's almost like hot potato. It's like, oh no, you take him, you take him, you take him.
No, that's a really good description. I mean, I could bring a bunch of Sin with one single troop over to your planet.
With the intent of losing.
And just kind of drop them off.
It's like, oops, sorry, guy.
Sorry about that. They're your friends, right? You wanted them to
I love the
visit.
Sin in my place.
A diplomatic unit to come see you for a bit.
Thank you so much.
Now, a few other elements that we want to point out during this stage in the game, some important sticking points. First off is going to be the initiative order, right?
Yep.
There's been some player prototype in this, but there's going to be a draft system in play here. So die roll is going to be how you resolve that. And that was the kind of the core, the starting mechanic of this game. But you're also each going to have, and we don't have the prototypes of them here.
Correct.
You're each going to have a set of 4 cards in your hand. Turn order, initiative, 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
And you can only play those once throughout the period of the game. So you have to use every single one before you can play that card again. So if I really want to go first this round,
you can play 1.
I blind play down 1 and hopefully secure that first turn order position.
Except if somebody else plays 1.
Then you're going to be doing a die roll off to determine who's going to get that first or second place. The interesting thing about this is it gives you agency over that element of the game.
And turn order here is so important.
Well, there's a massive benefit because the way that you attack, develop, and deploy, it becomes really important when you're leveraging that turn order system, right? I might want to go slower this turn so that I'm able to get a 4th place and a 1st place right next to each other and get back-to-back turns. Or maybe I need to go really, really quick, or at least quicker than you, because I need to secure my position before you get the chance to attack and maybe defend yourself in my home world.
And I think it's interesting in terms of strategy, because you start seeing what every other player has, or at least you remember what they planned, and you know when you need to play that 2 or when you need to play that 1 in order to get an advantage across that entire board.
So we can kind of swing into phase 3 of this game,
The Sin,
without really changing too much, because the board is going to develop and flow, and could very well look at this around on round 3 or 4, win the Sin, roll, let's say, a 9, and actually start their engagement.
And that's a good opportunity to also talk about combat.
Exactly. So combat is going to be an interesting little system here, right? Everyone's going to have their combat mechanics. It's all going to be based off die, very similar to your Axis and Allies style combat system. If you're familiar with those tactical war games, you'll be very familiar with the units and how they move and attack in this game.
Basically, one or the other side either has to wipe everybody out or somebody has to retreat.
Higher and lower die rolls, right? Some units will attack on a 4 or a 6 or a 12. That'd be a really strong attack. And you'll be rolling and giving hits in combat. And it's all going to be at the same time.
Sort of. Yeah, it's almost done by phases.
Everything's able to roll and attack, but as units get destroyed, the next round you'll have less things to do, and you can choose to either press that attack forward, continuing to move on, or both units can do their very best to retreat.
But there's an additional layer here.
Yeah, exactly. We actually have this system right here.
The Cassie system.
Which I'm going to secure over top of one of my planets, and what this does is it establishes a higher or lower value system, right? So if you're attacking with battleships, or you have your ground troops, you can either elevate yourself or bury yourself in order to give you an advantage on the attack, but it also puts yourself out of range or in range of other units. So units that are positioned up top here, that have elevated themselves, are only able to attack this middle line, right? People that are out in the open kind of ground fighting. Now, if ground troops bury themselves down below, they're going to be out of range of these top units. However, they're going to be able to attack this middle area and have a slightly higher defense. It's like embanking yourself in the bottom of a trench, or raising up extremely high in the sky and just peppering the ground with fire.
So you have to make these decisions as soon as you enter combat. Do I want everybody right in the middle of the playing field with a little bit more of a disadvantage, or do I want to take the opportunity to really distribute my troops and make sure that I am taking advantage of their special abilities?
Well, and I like that this actually slots in directly over a planet. It allows you to separate the battle from the chaos that's happening on the board, right? Because there's a lot of miniatures, so miniature management becomes really salient. There's also this nice chart over here, which if you know how the system works, you don't always have to utilize it. For us, I like the visual element. I also it helps me mentally kind of coordinate everything.
Yes, for sure.
I'm not used to these types of games. But over here, we also have an attacker-defender unit board, so you can reposition the entire battle squad happening over here, and you can actually sequence everything. They also have a interesting way of tracking kind of troops, right? So if you have an entire fleet, you can position them over here, set them up with a chip or a die that's attached to a specific number, and then attach that die here. So you are representing this squad of 50 destroyers.
Yes, it could be gigantic.
Balance. So there's nice big sides over here where you can keep that organized and keep everything kind of contained. So that's going to be the main battle mechanic. Now let's talk about the dynamic. We've already touched on it throughout the course of this, but let's talk about the dynamic when the Sin actually shifts. Like we said, once they shift, they become hostile, and just like at the beginning of the game when you're exploring territories, every battle is going to resolve immediately. So you're going to go across this board and you're going to trigger every single location they have control. Looking to see if they end up fulfilling their win condition. If they do, you go through a round trying to do your very best to claw
get them out
back from them. And or establish a separate win condition to neutralize, to make the playing field kind of maintain itself, right? Or if you can't, they're going to have secured their foothold, betrayed the alliance that they'd set up, and win the end of the game. Now, what's it like for players who are playing some of these side factions, right? When the Sin actually shift? What are you paying attention to?
So, as we said before, you have two very specific options. You either collaborate a little bit throughout the game, or you go completely cutthroat and not pay any attention to that Sin. Both of those strategies can be hampered and can be easily taken advantage of by that red or sin player.
Yeah.
So as a side faction, you want balance. You want to make sure that you're spreading confidently, but also speaking with everybody at the table to say, hey,
there's an
the
element,
sins are moving in there.
There's an element of cooperative play here, which is really interesting. You really, from ground zero, have to be negotiating and balancing the game state if you want to make sure that the sin don't sweep it at the end.
Yep.
It's one of those things that you learn after playing the game a few times. Another one of those points that we're going to continue emphasizing. This is a game that if you decide this game is right for you and your gaming group, this is a game that you need to dig into, right?
Yeah.
You want to sink your teeth into it. You want a core group that's going to show up, table it with you, and figure out the intricacies and dynamics when it comes to the tabletop play here.
Yeah, for sure. This is not a one and done type of deal. You're going to be sitting here for a few hours.
There's a lot of gameplay in this.
Yeah, and you just have to completely envelop yourself in this world and in the mechanics and in understanding these units. All of it.
It's another one of those games that I think it's similar to the genre. Like I said, I'm newer to this genre space, but my sense of things is this slow build to crescendo, this kind of space opera or this operatic historical kind of game, one where you are going to be in your head as much as you are vocal, sitting around the table talking about the war, the strategy, trying to subvert other people's expectations, and looking for that one little opening to insert yourself and close the deal.
Yeah.
Right? That's the reward in these games, right? The pondering, the thinking, the building. If you like those style of games, this is one that gives you the opportunity to do all of that.
And I would say that I feel there's two very different types of like skirmish games like that. There's skirmish games where everything is resolved by little tiny incremental battles.
Sure.
And other skirmish games where you're going in for an epic conflict
You're building
of intergalactic
your troop,
proportions.
and then space warping to their front door, and the showdowns happening in the fourth quarter of the game.
And this is that game,
Yeah.
right? This is a game about gigantic and incredible battles that are resolved with a bunch of dice.
Yep.
And where ultimately the one that has the best defenses, the best type of units in play.
And when we're talking a bunch of
gonna be
dice,
better.
I mean, there were moments in the final gameplay where we were
Yes.
rolling handfuls of dice to resolve the game we were playing. If you like crunchy dice rolling style games, this is going to give you all the opportunity in the world,
All of them,
to roll piles of dice.
Oh,
which
yeah.
I do like rolling piles of dice.
And these are nice dice too, so.
Yeah. No, I mean, the production quality
No
across the
complaint
board's
here.
been fantastic. So that's sort of the third stage of the game. That resolves in the win condition, and then you reset up and start back at ground zero and play through another game of it. Right? That's the...
Or maybe another day. It
Okay,
depends.
maybe you reconvene with your friends, talk about the strategy, are left thinking about the things that you messed up in the game,
Exactly.
and then you get together and play.
yeah,
another game.
you have to mull it over at least a little bit.
I mean, a significant amount.
Yeah.
I've thought about how we kind of fought each other repeatedly and let the
That
same...
wasn't the best strategic decision, was it?
So in the game...
Derek completely overran everybody.
Well, until I let the sin in my back door and
Yeah.
just got completely done.
Yeah, they annihilated you. It was heart-wrenching.
Let's
to
not talk
see.
about it. Let's not talk about it. All that being said, Jen, I think that kind of wraps up this end. Like, I wanted to be able to pinpoint some of the elements that I find really interesting in this game to allow people who are digging into the campaign to figure out what the back-end strategy is going to be beyond sort of the surface level, how to play, and the rules guides. So if you're watching this, let us know your thoughts. What are your thoughts on this game so far? Does it seem like one that you and your gaming group will be able to table? Or does it seem like a kind of massive big box game
that you might be too intimidated
might
about?
be a little intimidated. And all that being said, I know that Rob's going to be active in the Kickstarter. He's going to be active in all the comments. So if you have any questions, if you are intimidated by any factors of this, I mean, this is a big game. There's a lot
100%.
happening here. Reach out to the creator, the designer, and ask him any of those questions. He'd be happy to answer.
Oh, yeah.
And help you figure out if this is going to be the right game for you. Whatever you do, though,
Remember to do the important thing.
get out and play some games.
We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.